People always talk about the Parker family like they're royalty. They have everything. They're the happiest family in town. Look at their perfect house, their perfect car, their perfect daughter. Mr. Parker is a successful businessman, always dressed in elegant suits, shaking hands with important people. Mrs. Parker is graceful, always smiling, always polite. And their daughter Emily, she's the top student, the kindest girl in school, the one everyone admires. They live in a mansion with a big garden. Their family photos always look like something from a magazine, and every word they say sounds perfect. And then there's my family. My parents work day and night, barely having time to rest. They argue a lot about money, about bills, about things I don't even understand. My little brother cries because he wants new shoes, but we can't afford them. Our apartment is small, loud, and messy. With no space to breathe, nothing about us looks perfect from the outside. But lately, I've been wondering, is perfection really what it seems? One day after school, Emily invited me to her house. I hesitated at first. What would a girl like her want with someone like me? But curiosity won. I wanted to see what it felt like to be in a perfect home. When I stepped inside, it was like walking into a dream. The living room was huge, with elegant furniture and sparkling chandeliers. There was no mess, no shouting, no signs of struggle. A grand piano stood in the corner, untouched yet spotless. The smell of expensive perfume lingered in the air. Mrs. Parker greeted me with a warm smile, but her eyes looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Mr. Parker barely acknowledged my presence, too busy talking on the phone about some business deal. Emily led me upstairs to her room, which was just as perfect as the rest of the house. Neat, color-coordinated, with trophies and medals decorating the shelves. You're so lucky, I sighed, looking around in awe. Emily gave me a strange look. Lucky, she repeated, her voice quiet. For a moment, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Sadness, maybe even pain, but she quickly forced a smile. Yeah, I guess. Something about the way she said it made me uneasy. Why did she sound like she didn't believe it herself? That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Emily's strange reaction. Her life looked so perfect. Her house, her family, everything. But something felt off. The next day at school, I saw Emily sitting alone in the courtyard. Normally, she was surrounded by friends, always laughing, always cheerful. But today, she stared at the ground, lost in thought. I hesitated for a moment before walking over. Hey, Emily, are you okay? She looked up, startled, like she hadn't noticed me there. Oh, Mia. Yeah, I'm fine. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I sat beside her. You know, you don't have to pretend with me. For a second, she said nothing. Then she let out a small, bitter laugh. Pretend, huh? I guess I've gotten really good at that. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated, playing with the bracelet on her wrist. Finally, she spoke in a quiet voice. People think I have everything. The perfect family, the perfect house, the perfect life. But do you know what it's really like at home? I shook my head, heart pounding. Emily looked away, her fingers tightening around her bracelet. My parents barely talk to each other. My dad is always working, and my mom spends all her time pretending everything is fine. We have dinner together, but it's silent. No one asks how my day was.
No one really cares. They only care about looking perfect to the world.
She turned to me, her eyes filled with something I never expected. Loneliness.
Mia, sometimes I think your family, even with all the fights and struggles, at least it's real.
Her words hit me harder than I thought they would. My family wasn't perfect, we argued. We struggled. We barely made it through some months. But in that moment, I realized maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe love was about being there, really being there, even through the mess. After my visit to Emily's house, I couldn't stop thinking about how different our lives were. Everything in her home was elegant and pristine, but it felt empty, like a museum, not a place where a family truly lived. One evening, as we packed up after school, I hesitated for a moment before asking, "Emily, do you want to come over to my house today?" She looked surprised.
To your house?
I nodded. Yeah, I mean, it's small, and it's a bit messy sometimes, but I thought you might like to see something different. She hesitated, then gave a small smile.
Okay, I'd like that.
When we arrived, my little brother was chasing our dog around the living room. My mom was singing while cooking dinner, and my dad was arguing with my sister over a silly TV show. It was loud, chaotic, and completely different from what she was used to. Emily stood by the door, watching everything with wide eyes. Then she whispered,
Your house is so alive.
I laughed. Yeah, it's a little crazy, but it's home. As we sat down for dinner, my mom made sure Emily's plate was full, asking her about school and her favorite foods. My dad cracked his usual dad jokes, making everyone groan but laugh anyway. Emily smiled, really smiled, not the polite one she always wore at school. That night, as she left, she turned to me and said softly,
Mia, your family may not be perfect, but it's real. And honestly, I think that's even better.
I watched her walk away, feeling something shift. Maybe she had everything money could buy. But for the first time, I realized maybe what she really wanted was something my family had all along. A few days later, Emily and I sat by the school courtyard, watching students walk by. She was quiet, her usual cheerful mask nowhere to be seen.
Mia,
she said suddenly, her voice softer than usual.
Can I tell you something?
I turned to her, nodding. She hesitated, then took a deep breath.
People always look at my family and say we're perfect. They think we have everything. Money, a big house, success. But they don't see what happens behind closed doors.
She lowered her gaze, twisting her fingers nervously.
My parents don't love each other, Mia. They barely talk, except when they're discussing their business. At home, it feels like I'm just another decoration, something to make the family look good, not someone they truly care about.
I stayed silent, letting her continue.
I used to envy families like yours,
she admitted.
I used to think, why do they argue so much? Why is their house so chaotic? But now, I realize I'd trade all this perfection for just one real moment of warmth. For one time, my parents laughed together like yours do. For one time, they looked at me like I mattered, not just as their daughter, but as a person.
Her voice cracked, and I could see her eyes glistening. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. Emily, your life doesn't have to be like theirs. You get to choose how you want to live, how you want to love. Just because they're cold doesn't mean you have to be... She nodded slowly, wiping a tear from her cheek. For the first time, She let her guard down, allowing herself to feel. As the bell rang, we stood up together. Emily wasn't just the perfect rich girl anymore. She was a friend, someone who had her own pain, her own struggles. And in that moment, I realized sometimes the people who seem to have everything are the ones who need love the most.